Welcome. Welcome to each one of you. Good day. No matter where in the world you are, always good to see you, to get a chance to practice together. How's the sound? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, good. Lovely. So, as usual for a Sunday morning, we're going to do about 10 or 15 minutes of guided meditation. And then I'll offer a Dhamma talk, and hopefully there will be some time left over at the end for reflections, questions, comments. And yeah, so today I thought we might do a practice on the 6 sense bases. We won't do all 6 in 15 minutes. That would be a little rushed, but maybe 2 or 3 of them. See how many we get to. So I'd like to begin just a little bit of movement, a little rocking from side to side, from front to back. Allowing the body to come into an upright position. Balanced. No need to lean toward the computer or and perhaps beginning by feeling the feet and the legs in whatever way you have them positioned. Just sensing the weight of the body. And releasing any holding in the lower abdomen. Sensing the natural stability of the body. We're moving the attention to the left hand and becoming aware of the sensations of touch in the left hand. No need to strain in any way, just receiving sensations of touch. Staying curious about the sensations of touch in the hand. And now shifting the awareness to the mind as a sense organ. So, how is it to receive all thoughts and perceptions as mere sensations of the mind? Just observing the mind and mental activity as mere sensations. Aware of mental activity as sensations of the mind. as our meditation for today's program. Claudia, ¿te pongo como intérprete para grabar o prefieres no? No, okay. Beautiful. So I will shift to the Dhamma talk for today. And welcome to folks who have just arrived. Yes.
I'm not in the channel, and I think Amparo is here. Yes, she is.
Yeah. Oh, okay, beautiful. Let's put you. Okay. So as usual, I'm going to begin with the homage to the Buddha and the Triple Gem. You can feel free to chant along with your mics muted. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. People come to practice with all sorts of different ideas and motivations. And that's all good. Even sometimes a distorted or a mistaken motivation about practice can get ironed out in a very positive way. And generally, I think it's good to keep in mind that the path is about awakening. The path, the Noble Eightfold Path, or the practice of Buddhism is generally about awakening to the true nature of our lives. What's true, what's real, what's actually happening in these bodies and minds, and in the others' bodies and minds, and in the world around us. In fact, that's one of the definitions of the word dharma, or dhamma, dharma in Sanskrit, or dhamma in Pali. It means truth, or it means reality. It also means law, or it means the teachings. There are many ways to understand that. But I want to talk a little bit today about some of the factors that we can influence in our lives when we think about being on the path of awakening. So again, whether you feel like that's your motivation or not, maybe you have a different motivation, maybe you have a more short-term goal, so to speak, or you have a more modest idea about what's possible for yourself. Awakening is still right here. The Dhamma is still describing the world. In fact, it reminds me, every time I think about that teaching, I think about Zenke Blanche Hartman, who was the first woman abbess of San Francisco Zen Center. And when people would tell her that they didn't think that they could wake up, she would say, "Oh, you're not that exceptional." right? You're not that special. It would take somebody extremely special to not be able to wake up. Do you see? Because the path is describing what's real, what's here, what's actually true. Or at least it's for us to discover whether the path is describing what's true. So I want to talk a little bit about the factors that the Buddha described, factors for stream entry. So now awakening is described in various different ways in various Buddhist traditions. Many, many different ways. In Soto Zen, for example, what we see is we see often this kind of talk about one great leap. There's one great opening. Aha! Leaping beyond the boundary of awakening is the literal phrase that Eihei Dogen Zenji used. He was the founder of Soto Zen in Japan in 13th century Japan. And then there's also some idea about dropping off the awakening. So there's like a two-step process that's described in Zen oftentimes. It's a very interesting dynamic that's talked about there. And I won't try to, we might in the Q&A later, but for now, I won't try to sync this up with the early Buddhist way of describing awakening. I'm just going to talk more about that today. So in the early Buddhist forms of talking about awakening that are usually associated with the school that we call the Theravada. The Thera means the elders, and the Vada is the doctrine or the way of the elders. And the current day Theravada school is a kind of a restart of those very, very earliest forms of Buddhism. There was a break in there. There's not a continuous, as far as I know, there's not a single continuous lineage in any of the schools, despite what people say to the contrary. But coming back to the early teachings as we find them described in the Pali, in suttas that are in the ancient Pali language. So the suttas with two T's. And they are said to be the actual words that were written down. So the teachings were initially carried verbally by the disciples of the Buddha, the most famously Venerable Ananda, right? Venerable Ananda was the Buddha's attendant for about 25 years, for the last 25 years of his life. He had another attendant previous to that, who isn't quite so famous, but helpful nonetheless. And memorized by other folks too, right? And then passed on verbally from generation to generation until they started to be written down a few centuries, at least 3 or 4 centuries after the Buddha's time, if not later. So we have these texts, and there is a particular group of texts called the linked discourses, or the Samyutta Nikaya. So in the linked discourses, chapter 55, number 5, so there are thousands of these discourses that have been collected over time. There is this sutta of 4 things, when developed, lead to stream entry. 4 things. And I really want to say that the reason why I'm bringing these forth, so stream entry is the first of 4 stages of awakening as it's described in early Buddhism. And it's said that at stream entry, there are certain problems that fall away, like doubt or thinking that rituals will save you in some way, or certain aspects of the understanding of self. All these kinds of things can change. But the most interesting part about stream entry is that it is said that after that point, then full enlightenment is inevitable. And it will happen within a small number of rebirths, about 7. Now, mind you that in the way that we understand numbers in the Pali Suttas is a little more flexible than the way we would understand them probably in contemporary times. So, but a small number. So it's an important point, the point that people sometimes actually strive for, like, okay, trying to attain stream entry. And again, it's a first stage of the dawning of wisdom, you could say. And there are only 4 things described here that are factors for the stream entry to arise. So now these are not the actual factors of awakening. These are conditions that you can put forth in, that you can kind of develop in your life, things that you can cultivate or develop within your life that make you more prone to waking up. So I bring them forth because I think that they're reasonably possible. They're reasonably possible for all of us. It's not that it's asking you to be able to walk through walls or walk on water, or asking you to be able to do certain advanced forms of meditation, or crack the code of a certain very confusing text. It's not any of those things. It's just four things described by the Buddha. So let me get them in front of me, because I wanted to give you a little bit of context for the sutta. Bear with me for 1 second. Yeah, so that's what I thought. So this sutta is also quite interesting because it's actually the Buddha is quizzing Venerable Sariputta. So Venerable Sariputta was one of the Buddha's key disciples, students. He was known as the general of the Dharma eventually. He was like the tough guy, so to speak, extremely, extremely well respected. Sariputta and Moggallana were the two considered to be like the 2 most advanced disciples of the Buddha, the historical Buddha back in India. So the Buddha's quizzing Sariputta in this sutta. So you can imagine the Buddha sitting down and quizzing you, huh? How would that be? You'd have to feel pretty confident, right? Just to even give any answers, let alone try to give correct answers to the Buddha. But here he says, Sariputta, they speak of factor of stream entry. What is a factor of stream entry? So the Buddha asks Sariputta, and Sariputta responds, of course, with teachings that he's learned from the Buddha himself, yeah? In his own words, though, he says, the factors of stream entry are associating with good persons, listening to the true teaching. Now, Bhante Sujato translates this next one as rational application of the mind. I think that's a very, very modernistic way of translating this thing. It's more like, I would say, careful or thorough attention. And then the 4th is practicing in line with the Dhamma. Practicing in line with the Dhamma. So just 4 things. 4 things, right? The first one is associating with good people. So a couple of weeks back, we had a conversation about that, right? If we only associated with the wise people, then the unwise people would never become wise people, right? Somebody's got to hang out with the unwise people sometimes, right? And help them out too, and be Dhamma friends with them too. So, but associating with good people, what does the Buddha mean, or what does Sariputta mean when he says good people? So the word in Pali is sa-puddhisa. And sa just means good or true or real, actually. So you might think that it means something like an authentic person or a genuine person. Buddhisa is just that. It means person. It literally means man, but I think it means man in the sense of like, when we say mankind, it's more like humankind, right? It's not just one gender. It's everybody. It's people. So good people, true people, real people. You need to hang out with folks like that. And then I thought, well, so what does that mean, huh? How would the Buddha have described that? So the Buddha in another sutta says, you know, in the numbered discourses, chapter 7, number 37 and 36, the Buddha says about good people. I'm going to bring it up on my screen because now my screen share is actually working these days. It's so great. Hold on. We'll bring it up right here. And only because this is one of the most important parts and also one of the most doable parts, I think. So here we have, there you go. Hopefully everybody can see the Friend Sutta. Yeah? Number discourse, number 7.36. So here is a friend. A friend has 7 qualities. They give what's hard to give. They do what's hard to do. They endure what is difficult to endure. They reveal their secrets to you and keep your secrets. And they don't abandon you in times of trouble or look down on you in times of loss. It's a very interesting definition of a friend, huh? Give what is hard to give and do what is hard to do. So somebody who's willing to go out of their way for you. Yeah. Endure what is difficult to endure. Reveal their secrets and keep your secrets. I think that this is something about intimacy, right? That it's someone that you can get really personal with. And that you feel that they're also being personal with you and intimate with you, that there's a reciprocity in the relationship and an authenticity, a genuineness, a sincerity to the relationship. And don't abandon you in times of trouble or look down on you in times of loss. So they stand by you when things get tough. And they don't judge you. And similarly, the next sutta is also similar. Folks that are likable, respected, admired, they admonish you and they accept admonishment. So they call you out a little bit, when you could improve. And they also accept being called out or being told that they could also improve. They speak on deep matters and they don't urge you to do bad things. So these are some very interesting and again, I think very reasonable expectations about what's a good person. What kind of person would be a person worthy of hanging out with, right? Of spending your time with. Someone who would be a good influence. So I want to give you an example because there's even a sutta in which the Buddha says, somebody who would be willing to lay down their life for you or to get into trouble for you would also be a good friend. And I think about John Lewis talking about good trouble. That's one thing. That's an American saying. John Lewis was an American politician who used to get in trouble, so to speak, for his social actions, for his standing up for the rights of Black people in America. But other than that, I also want to talk about another Black person, a woman named Antoinette Tuff. Antoinette is her first name, and Tuff is her last name, Tuff. And I talk about her every once in a while because I'm so taken with what she did. So Antoinette worked for the school district in Georgia, in the southeast part of the United States. And one day, a young man And so she was a bookkeeper. She just worked there in the office. And one day, a young man walked in with a machine gun. And he started shooting at the floor and saying that he was going to go and kill everyone there in the office, kill all the children in the school. It's the middle of the school day. And Antoinette was the person who happened to be at the desk when he walked into the office and started saying these things and shooting his gun. Now, mind you, this is back in the days before there was any kind of training about this. This is 2013. And so what did she do? Well, she started talking to him. She started talking to him and asking him, what did he want? Why was he there? What was going on for him? And he started telling her, you know, he had some mental health challenges. He was off his medicine. He was feeling really worried and really angry, confused. And so she kept talking to him. And she told him about her divorce the year before. And she told him about her own struggles with mental health. And she just kept talking to him like a person. And she actually was the person who got on the phone with the police and talked and was the go-between between this young man, this very, very upset, dangerous young man, and the police. And they talked it through for a while. And eventually she said to him, you know, I love you and I really want you to set down this idea that you have. And maybe you could just turn yourself in. And I would even walk out there with you. So you could turn yourself in to the police. And know that you would be safe and you'd be okay. And eventually that's what he did. He didn't actually walk out there with her. He laid down his gun and he laid down on the floor and he let them come take him and arrest him. And she stayed with him the whole time and she talked to him the whole time. And when they asked her, why did you do that? Why, how were you able to do that? She said, well, you know what? I learned in church that you always treat people like people. That people have their hard times and they have their good times, but you always treat people like people. And you be honest with them. And you try to help them. And that's what happened. She saved everybody in that school that day. Just because she was willing to keep talking to him. And she said later, she said, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And in my heart, I was saying, oh my God, God, please help me because I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Right? But she just hung in there for herself and for him. So I really want to say, that's a good person. That's a way to think about what's it like to be a good person. If you were called upon in that situation, could you be a good person to that other person? You know, it's a question. It's something for us to work on, something for us to think about. But to really think about also the fact that when you hear something like that, like you'd be willing to put yourself in danger for somebody else, for a stranger, you know, it might happen like that. It was just a regular day. Antoinette went to the office to do some bookkeeping, right? She did not expect to have that kind of a day. But in her heart, she was prepared, right? And in her attitude, she was prepared to have that kind of a day. So when we think about whether you call it the Bodhisattva vow, or whether you call it Dharma practice, or whether you call it how to be a good friend. These are the kinds of things to think about. Mm-hmm. So the second one is hearing the good Dhamma, hearing the good teaching. I think you all have the benefit of that. There's certainly in this day and age when there is all manner of books and retreats and Dharma talks and groups meeting. There are all kinds of ways that you can touch into the Dhamma. And there have been different opinions about what constitutes the good Dhamma or the true Dhamma, right? I was talking to somebody recently and I said, you know, Buddhism is like Christianity. There are about 100 different kinds of Buddhism in the world, you know? And they have very, very different beliefs. Some of them have, you know, if you were to compare one school to another. I was giving an introductory course. I said it's hard to even find one thing that you could say that is true of all the schools, even meditation or precepts or, you know, maybe compassion. Maybe compassion would be the one thing you could say is true for all the schools. But there are different ways of understanding the true Dhamma. And I think, again, if we'd go back to our own capacity for discernment and understanding the Dhamma as a description of reality, as a description of what's really happening in our bodies and minds, that's your measure, that's your mark. No? The Buddha said you could not tell by analysis, you can't tell by tradition, you can't tell by what book somebody teaches by. You could tell by what leads to less greed, less hatred, less delusion, right? Less delusion, right? More clarity about what's true. And again, going back to this question of who are the wise or who are the people that we could depend on for the true Dhamma, there's another beautiful sutta that I wanted to share today, which is also from the numbered discourses in the fours. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of suttas just in the four category of the numbered discourses. But this one is four in the chapter of the fours, number 186. And it's a short sutta. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to talk to you about the last little bit of it. And in this one, it's another person asking the Buddha some questions, a mendicant asking the Buddha some questions. And he comes to the end and he says, how is a person, an astute person with great wisdom, defined? How would the Buddha himself have described somebody who was of great wisdom? And he says, oh, good question. First of all. So, that's one way, right? Asking good questions. That was an interesting response, right? But then he answers the question this way. He says, an astute person, right? A person with clarity, a person with great wisdom, is one who has no intention to harm themselves or to harm others or to harm either one. When they think only of the benefit for themselves, for others, and both, for the whole world. Wow. So you think, again, people think, oh, this only came in later schools, this idea that wisdom is all about compassion. But actually, the Buddha said very clearly that wisdom is all about compassion, right? The thought of non-harming toward yourself toward others, toward the whole world, how to support that, how to be somebody like Antoinette, who's helping that to happen, even in a world that is totally confused and bent on the opposite. So that's the good Dhamma. The good Dhamma is the Dhamma of compassion. The good Dhamma is the Dhamma of clarity, that we have that capacity to be that in the world. Each one of us. And we know it when we see it. We know it when we see it. Right? That's why people like Mother Teresa and Gandhi become famous. Even years after their death, they were so compassionate that people remember them. They knew it when they saw it. So that's the second one. So one is associating with good people. The second one is hearing the good Dhamma. The third one is yoniso manasikara, that's the Pali word, means wise attention or careful attention. So there's a couple of different, I mean, I could give the whole talk on just that and just wise attention, but there's not, that's not the focus of the talk today. But I do want to say there's a couple of concepts embedded in just that little phrase. So one is attention, meaning the ability to direct the mind. So one reason why we see many different kinds of meditation within Buddhism, and not just a single kind, is because we are training ourselves to be able to place the mind where we want to place it. We're training ourselves to be able to observe specific phenomena, just like we did in the meditation earlier, right? You turn the mind to the feeling of sensation of feeling in the hand. Then you can turn the mind to looking at itself, looking at thoughts, looking at different perceptions, right? You are teaching yourself again and again and again, because we have to do it many times, usually in the course of even one meditation. You're training yourself how to have attention, how to use your attention, how to develop your attention, the strength of attention, the persistence of your attention, and to be able to observe every single kind of phenomena in your world. That's why we have so many different kinds of meditation, because they are telling you, oh, now look at this, now look at this, now look at that, now look at that, right? Sometimes it's a mental phenomena, sometimes it's a physical phenomena, sometimes very subtle, sometimes very obvious. Sometimes it's off the cushion, moving around, talking to people. Yeah. So this attitude, this capacity for placing the mind's awareness on particular phenomena, that's what we mean by attention. And learning how to work with your attention is very, very important in the practice. Because generally speaking, in everyday life, your attention is very superficial. If you want to see very, very subtle phenomena within the mind, you need to be able to have a very strong capacity and a very clear capacity for looking at specific phenomena. So there's that. And then there's the thorough or the wise part, right? So you might have a mind that's very, very strong and very clear and very able to focus on one thing. And then what do? You focus on, oh, let's say, craving for alcohol. And you spend all your time thinking about that, all your time. And then what's that? That's called addiction, right? That's unskillful use of your attention and your awareness. So you need to have a skillful attention or a thorough attention. And you don't want to place the mind and focus on clinging specifically, right? We know that clinging is a very, very key reason for the experience of suffering. In fact, the Buddha said it was the primary driver, the primary cause of dukkha, of unsatisfactoriness or of suffering in our lives, is craving, clinging, tanha, this thing called thirst, this wanting to hold on to things that are inherently impermanent. Yeah, so wise attention is very clear about not taking on certain kinds of objects that are going to be unskillful, right? Perseverating, sticking too long on the unskillful, getting tied up in that. Or the Buddha said another way that he defined unwise attention was these general philosophical questions like, oh, who am I? What am I? What was I in the past? He said, that's ridiculous. He refused to answer those questions even. He said, don't ask those questions. Those questions are just basic philosophical questions. You don't want to turn your mind to those kinds of questions. What you want to do is you want to turn your mind to the present moment experience of what is this thing? And then it will tell you the answer to that question. And you won't be spinning out in this kind of general philosophy. Yeah? You attend to the thing itself. You don't philosophize about the thing. And then the fourth, practice in accord with the Dhamma, right? Practice in accord with the teachings. And for this, I want to say, it's really important to bring a little bit of patience and a little bit of open-mindedness when it comes to practicing in accord with the Dhamma. And why is that? Because the Dhamma is specifically designed to show you the world in a way that is different than the way you understand it right now. Right? If you only hear teachings that fit with exactly what you understand right now, then you're missing the boat, because that's the whole purpose of the Dhamma is to break open your idea of the world, to completely transcend that, transform it, to see the world in a way you've never seen it before. So practice in accord with the Dhamma means you have to be willing to have an open mind, to say, hey, it says it works like this, so let me find out, does it or doesn't it? And put your actual time and effort into that question. Not just thinking about it, practicing it, right? I myself, I was an armchair Buddhist for a very long time. I was very good at reading books. I studied, I did some meditation and stuff, but then I would fall off the meditation for a while, and then I would just read books and I'd be like, yeah, I'm practicing. Well, all right. I would say reading about the thing is not the same thing as doing the thing, right? So I understand that sometimes it's hard to stay on the path, but it's the practice that really matters. It's the practice that really matters. If you have a choice between thinking about the Dhamma for 10 minutes and practicing the Dhamma for 10 minutes, please do the latter. Please. So I want to wrap up with enough time for at least one or two questions, but I want to just again repeat what the four things are, because I think that when I read this list of four things, I think, right, these are the kinds of choices that I can make in my life. Associating with good people, hearing the good Dhamma, what's the third one? Wise attention. Wise attention or thorough attention, and practicing. practicing what you've learned. So I wish you lots of good friendship, good Dhamma opportunities. And mostly I wish you a Dhamma that challenges what you think, that really asks you to open up to a different world. The same world, just a different understanding of it.